This is the ideal ogre body. You may not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like. The ogres are coming to get you, in darkness, in shadow, and you'll never see them coming. I wanted to unleash a storm of memes in this battle, which means a vanguard stalking ambush of weebs, of ninjas moving fatly around corners and over hills, of glorious Nippon steel folded 10 billion times to cut through the very fabric of reality itself. While all the other Chad ogres were out having premarital relationships, Eshin Maneaters were studying the blade. And now that the world's on fire, now that the dwarf tide has swept the planet, now you have the audacity to come to them for help? Very well, it appears it's time to cultivate inner strength and summon our jutsus. Sasuke, hit him with your Sharingan! So, I never actually watched Naruto. I don't know if my verbiage there is correct. It sounded cool. Once again, I've held down, forced Okoi into playing inferior factions with low mass centers of gravity and BMIs, while I wield those most chadly of races. And we're going to be unleashing some cheesy vanguard goodness here. Now, the Eshin Maneater is technically a regiment of renown. You can only bring one of them, but I disagree, so I brought 3 instead. Trained in the Far East with the Rats, these Steven Seagal Maul ninjas are actually very capable melee combatants, imbued with weeping blades that cut armor values in half, 20 bonus versus infantry, stalk, vanguard, and dodge for 15% physical resist. They have a lot of utility and dueling potential, not to mention some powerful active abilities. Smoke Bomb increases their defense, speed, and makes them unspottable, while Marked for Eaton is a huge debuff for single enemy units. They are definitely squishy, but if you keep them moving and time your smoke bombs well, you can cause a lot of havoc in an enemy back line, running over artillery, range units, and dueling characters. The Dwarfs, meanwhile, are channeling their inner Bugman with a Ranger and Slayer themed build, bunch of stealthy crossbows and throwing axe units, with 2 Goblin Hewers, which are big threat to the big single entities on the Ogre side, an Organ Gun, and a bunch of Giant Slayers led by Thorgrim Grudgebear. Imagine Mr. Maneater has quite a few pages in the Damaz Kron, carved out solely in his name. Thorgrim has his High King and Great Book of Grudges abilities, but he has his work cut out for him here because I wanted to see if I could discern any difference in the melee output of Thunder Tusks and Stonehorns. Great way to do that is with a sneaky for an ogre type build, including a hunter with the Noblar Thiefstone, making him unspottable, giving him stalk and a 15% ward save when out of melee. Probably the biggest creature in the setting that can appear entirely invisible. Another Stonehorn on top of it, Gold Maneater in the center with his Deadeye and Bugman's quadruple X Brew, which is incredibly disrespectful to be quaffing that dwarf ale in front of the High King. And as the battle begins, Organ Guns opening up on the Maneater Lord. Mercenaries moving all the way across the beaten zone, and we've got a Noblar rush here. Bunch of chaff, because the rest of it is pretty expensive. Eshin Maneaters, I think, are around 1,300 gold, if I remember correctly, and the Stonehorns are pushing 2,000. So, impactful, but expensive single entities, and a lot of eggs in one basket. Heavily dependent on surprise here to make this ambush work, to put those ranged troops in disarray right from the jump, tie them down, disrupt them, keep them moving, and allow the Stonehorns the time and space they need to crush those important targets. At this stage, Okoi already knew something was up. Almost half my funds were tied up in invisible units. He was already very wary. And then he got sprung. The Ninja Thickness tumbling down the mountainside in a storm of whirling, weeping blades, katana, tanto, wakizashi, shuriken, Sharingan. You will feel their wrath, Dawi scum. Like I said, never saw him coming. Immediately relieves 5 or 6 Slayers of their heads and tying down the Goblin Hewers so they can't turn and focus the Stonehorns, who are overloading the dwarf left flank. So the initial stages of this ambush anyway, working out quite nicely. Immediately a bunch of rain troops tied down. The dwarfs were wondering what the hell just hit them. And I was wondering going into this battle, and I'm still not sure after it, honestly, whether you want to be popping the smoke bomb right as you go into melee before it to make sure you use that unspottable, or to escape. And it feels like escape might be the correct call on that front, depending on the situation, because it does unleash that huge fart cloud that knocks everything backwards and gives them the space they need to run away, increases their melee defense too. But I think the unspottable could be useful too, so they don't turn around and shoot you when you're coming in, which did happen to the initial 2 man-eaters. Either way, they've done what there was required for them in those initial stages, made it so the Stonehorns got in on the flank, and look at this charge from the Stonehorn on the right side of your screen. Oh my lord! I'm not sure the Thunder Tusk has the animations required to do that much damage. I think the benefit that the Stonehorn might have in these anti-infantry types of roles is simply how far their charge carries them. They're a lot like the Cameroon War Sphinx. So while the Thunder Tusk does have better stats, and we saw it absolutely crush Skull Crushers in that last replay, and it still has some decent animations for carrying through, I feel like that stampede that they unleash, the Stonehorns, is maybe unique to them. I gotta do more testing, but I would obviously hope that the melee monster would have a little bit better melee capabilities, whereas the Thunder Tusk has all that extra utility and the range play to give it some advantages on that side. Giant Slayers responded well though, already taken one Eshin Maneater, pretty much down to 0 HP. He's fleeing for the hills, may return, but gonna be hard to impact the battle now with all those mortal wounds. Thunder Tusks in the center are causing so much carnage and havoc for the Dawi. Organ guns turn all the way around, forcing that Stonehorn off at the crest of the hill. Maneaters are still bouncing in between all these Rangers in the back, but this is where things can get really dangerous if you're the Ogres, because once your monsters get tied down, the Goblin Hewers and all this range focus fire really comes into play. They cannot afford to get tied up and unable to move. The second you lose your momentum and don't have Nobbler pressure in the rear is when these single entities can start dropping like flies. And Goblin Hewers are one of the best artillery crews in the game for quickly deleting an important single entity. We're seeing that from the Stonehorn here. No other artillery piece could have done that except maybe like Trollhammer torpedoes, and they aren't even technically artillery. So yeah, brutal stuff. Stonehorn down to half HP, it needs to flee. Ogre Maneaters are going after Thorgrim Grudgebear, hitting him with that Weeping Blade, and big time marked for Eaton debuffs. Stonehorn charging into the back. Also remember, the Goblin Hewers are Slayers in and of themselves. They'll have a hard time dealing with the 110 armor of the Stonehorn, but anything else, the Maneaters specifically, they only have 40 armor. Goblin Hero crews will hurt them, and in fact, it looks like one of the Maneaters just died. Eshin Ninja in the center near Thorgrim was killed by Giant Slayers and by Rangers. Meat Feast, the tier 3 army ability for the Ogres, hitting the Stonehorn, keeping him topped off with a single entity heal. Very important to keep those monsters topped off in any way possible. They're really the killing power of this army. Goblin Hewers destroying the Stonehorn in the center while the Maneater crew teams up, and they're going to be unleashing some more jutsu. I love the fact that they take that like combat stance, the super weeby combat stance every single time they swing those swords. Just gotta pose, strike a pose, style on them, but sometimes you can style a little bit too much, and one of the Eshin Maneaters was slain. This is a really cool animation too. The Weeping Blades have that arcing crimson effect. Very anime. I really like that. They even I love how it even has like the little star effect play. Like, it's literally cutting through the fabric of reality itself. Man, the Hunter is devastated by all this focus fire. Good job from Oko here to defend his back line, and he's gonna have to flee. But one of the really important changes that came in this update is how the Ogres generate army abilities, and now it's based on charging units. And if you have a lot of Nobblers who are charging, you generate a lot of army ability resource very quickly. It means you get a lot of Meat Feasts, which means single entity heals. Now, I'm not entirely sure that Nobblers should count for like the full value of that resource, because I think it's literally just based on how many entities are charging. And if you have very few Ogre Bulls, I feel like maybe it should be harder to generate that resource. Maybe Nobblers should count for like half, but either way, I'm not entirely sure the balance ramifications of that. Haven't thought about it too hard yet. Just something to think about. If you have a lot of Nobblers, you get a lot of might. Might. That's what we're all about here, baby. Eshin Maneater is kind of cut up here. It's where the smoke bombs can really come in handy, but they have a fairly long-ish cooldown. You can't just spam them all the time, which is probably a good thing because unspawnable smoke bombs that give you 24 melee defense and disrupt enemy formations that heavily would be incredibly annoying if you were knocking those out every 30 seconds or so. But yeah, the Stonehorn's pulling some Giant Slayers away from the main force into the Eshin Maneater. Probably doesn't want to stick around in that fight for too long, and indeed, he will unleash his smoke bomb and flee, look for another opportunity to charge in. Balance of Power is dead even. Ambush started out great for the Ogres, but it kind of has turned on its head a little bit here. Hunter has rallied in the background. Thorgrim was chasing after him, but needs to get back into contact with the rest of his army to support them, because the Stonehorn back here is still causing all kinds of problems, and that is a crushing, stampeding charge downhill, just eviscerating the remnants of those Rangers while they're still striking poses with those weeping blades. We're into the witching hour. We're in the late game now. Both armies torn up. Golg is pretty beat up there. He's about a 4th HP remaining. Does have Bugman's quintuple X brew, but he'll have to be out of combat to pop that. And that's probably the big advantage the Ogres have right now, is that they still have access to healing, which could reinvigorate some of these really important single entities. And in fact, Mr. President, a second meat feast has hit the Hunter. Marked by Althar, hitting the Eshin Maneater, now caught up with the Giant Slayers, and this might be his doom. Oh man, he's getting absolutely torn apart, and throwing axes will indeed find his head and take him down. Nicely played from Okoi there. Marked by Althar is such a good single target debuff. Giant Slayers finish the job. Very, very well played. But now, vengeance for his brother. The katana makes landfall, and it will cleave their heads in twain. Glorious Nippon steel, folded 10 billion times to cut through the heart, the core of this world. He's gonna flee. He doesn't want to fight Slayers, dude. Not a good spot for him. Now with the hunt, man, Meat Feast is crazy good. I think it's just a renamed tier 3 ability. It's the same thing, I'm pretty sure, that it was before the patch. It had a different name before, but like that's 30% heal for something that has 110 armor. Stonehorns are going to be such a problem for the Dwarfs now, because they actually have health to work with. The Hunter was almost dead, but of course has the mass and speed to run away. And that feels kind of bad, honestly, if you're the Dawi, to get the Stonehorn and the Hunter that low and be unable to finish the job. I'll be very curious to see, particularly in this matchup, if Thunder Tusks end up supplanting the Stonehorns. Because, I mean, I think they proved their worth here, no question about it. They still have really impressive melee capability. Those cycle charges are just incredibly impressive. And even though the value wasn't absolutely insane, I think one of the Stonehorns is around 2,500. The Hunter is only like 1,600 or 1,700, so good, but nothing like completely spectacular. Didn't even quite pay for itself. But again, damage value is never the be-all and end-all of a battle, or indeed of unit performance. And at the end of the day, I'd say their disruption and their charges here, making sure those range units weren't focusing down everything else, like the Eshin Maneaters, made them very much worth it. Golg has popped his brew. He's back up to half HP, and there were 3 important heals this game, and really that was the core difference maker. If you get a powerful single entity down to like 5% health, and then they come back, and they're back up to 30% HP, that feels really bad, because you invested all those resources into killing something that you weren't able to finish off. So yeah, Maneaters did great in terms of their role. Value wasn't crazy impressive from them, but they were super fun to watch, extremely disruptive, and this kind of build, while maybe you won't be able to do in campaign without a little bit of cheating, or indeed in multiplayer without turning off unit caps, is really fun. Deadly Onslaught popped on goal. He's going to finish off the Organ Grudge Bearer, and that is going to be your game. What I'm probably going to do at some point anyway is go into an Ogre campaign and with the console spawn in, or allow myself to create 18 or 19 Eshin Maneaters, because I think a full stack of ninjas would be incredibly fun, incredibly thematic, and we could get some really entertaining content done with that. I kind of wish they weren't an ROR. I kind of wish they weren't like basically like a light legendary hero. It'd be cool to have more of them, or indeed have like full squads, but I think maybe modders will be able to handle that. Great game to Okoi. That was fun as hell, and thanks for being a good sport on that, because yeah, as I said, normally can't bring multiple RORs, but he did know some shenanigans were afoot, no question about it. He saw the unit caps get taken off, and being a little bit sneaky in pregame, and then certainly once we got into the battle, he's like, dude, that's not a full army, what is going on? So yeah, one Stonehorn got 2,600 value, very good, 3 chevrons earned, Hunter 227 kills and like 1,700 value. Gold did solid, nothing spectacular, but solid. The Maneaters were, I mean, at best, they were about 1,100 damage value. Most of them, one of them was 900, one of them was 400. The first one to die really kind of got pooped on by the Slayers. They're really not an OP unit, honestly, but they do have a lot of utility, and there's a lot of fun things you can do with them. So I don't think it'd be crazy if modders, or frankly, if Creative Assembly went back on their idea of an ROR and allowed you to get some more of them. Maybe just pick them as like a regular hero so you can have more in one stack. I don't know. I would like to see more, because I think It's just so thematic and fun to see gigantic sneaky foreign ogres coming over from Cathay and Nippon and teaching us all how to study and wield the blade.